Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we tear open the source material so you can walk away well-informed and hopefully a little surprised.
Yeah.
Today, we're plunging into the meticulously constructed universe of John Anthony White, better known, of course, as Jack White.
That's right. We are analyzing a figure celebrated as, the centerpiece of that whole 2000s garage rock revival. A massive solo artist in his own right, and, get this, soon-to-be Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee in 2025. That's with the White Stripes, alongside Meg White.
Yeah, and right away, our sources highlight this central paradox with Jack White. I mean, the New York Times called him the coolest, weirdest, and savviest rock star of our time. But at the same time, this is a guy who fiercely, vehemently advocates for almost crippling simplicity, artistic limitations, and these, frankly, antiquated analog recording methods.
It's a fascinating split, isn't it? His whole career feels like one long experiment in constraint. He genuinely seems to believe that by imposing these super strict rules, like a limited color palette, specific vintage gear, or even like fabricating personal mythology, he forces real creativity to bubble up.
Right. It's like he's trying to build this huge musical multiverse, but insisting on using only, 3 primary colors and the simplest tools imaginable.
Exactly. And that's our mission today. We're going to try and unpack that complexity. We're digging into the essential knowledge from his, incredibly prolific and very carefully curated career.
We want to explore how he built this entire world, really. From those early days back in Detroit, trying to, save old furniture.
Literally.
Right up to his recent surprise album drops, and now the Hall of Fame induction. Okay, so let's dive into that journey. We got to start where the myth really began. Detroit, the Olive Tree Shop, and the origin of the White Stripes. Now, he was born John Anthony Gillis.
Right, Gillis.
And one of the very first, and I think really telling, acts of his deliberate career transformation was legally changing his name when he married Meg White in 1996.
He legally took her surname, White, which, sources note was a reversal of tradition. It was pretty rare back then, still is, really. Think about that. It's like his first major act of artistic disruption, even before the band really hit.
It totally signals that he planned to reject conventional norms from the get-go, especially within that key creative partnership.
Absolutely. And he did have a musical foundation before Meg, though maybe a bit chaotic. He started playing drums super young, like first grade, found an old kit in the attic.
Left over from his older brother's band, right?
Yeah.
Catalyst.
Yeah, Catalyst. And his early influences were really broad. Started with classical music, apparently, then got deep, deep into the blues.
And we really can't overstate how important the blues are to his sound, his whole identity.
Oh, definitely not. He famously says Sunhouse's Grinnin' in Your Face is his favorite song ever, which is just this pure, raw, a cappella blues track. Zero frills.
That directness, that kind of lack of artifice, you can hear it becoming the bedrock for the White Stripes sound. Mixed, obviously, with that jolt of 60s rock doors, Led Zeppelin, that kind of stuff.
But yeah, his career path took this very non-rock star detour first. Before the fame, he was an upholsterer.
A full-on apprentice, then started his own one-man shop, Third Man Upholstery. And this period, it seems kind of mundane, right? Working with fabric and staples.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely critical. It's like the conceptual blueprint for his whole later aesthetic.
That's exactly where the structure starts to form. Get this slogan for the business: your furniture's not dead, pure Jack White.
Totally.
And the aesthetic choices he made even then, yellow and black, color scheme for the van, the uniform, the whole workspace, it was already strictly controlled. He was imposing structure on this, inherently messy trade.
But he couldn't stop himself from injecting art into it, even in weird ways. Our sources mention these wonderfully unconventional, maybe slightly unprofessional business practices, like he wrote his bills out in crayon.
Wait, in crayon? Okay, that's something.
And he apparently had this compulsion to write poetry and lyrics inside the furniture he was fixing.
Hold on. Poetry. Inside the couches.
That's what the sources say.
That's not just eccentric. That's like this fundamental, almost desperate need to put art into the everyday. He's literally building secret little art capsules, forcing a hidden story into these objects.
It totally foreshadows the kind of controlled mystery he'd later build around his music, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's the same impulse.
So the shift from upholstery to rock star really kicks off after he meets Meg White. Met her at a restaurant, Memphis Smoke, where she was working. They got married in 96. And then in 97, Meg starts playing drums, supposedly just on a whim.
Right, and they often claimed it was Bastille Day when she first played. July 14th,
Right.
which, immediately adds this layer of intentional mythology to the whole origin story. Was it really Bastille Day? Who knows? But it sounds good.
What's really key, though, is Jack's reaction to her drumming style.
Yes. He described her playing, which was, minimalistic, sometimes really simple, maybe occasionally off-tempo. He called it liberating and refreshing.
After years of presumably focusing on technical skill, here's someone just stripping rhythm down to its absolute bare bones.
Exactly. The essential core.
And this leads us right into the famous big lie, the whole sibling story that defined their early image.
Right. So they got married in 96, divorced in 2000, but publicly, for years, they insisted they were brother and sister. This whole fabrication eventually got busted by the press around 2002.
But White's justification later is so revealing about his need for artistic control, isn't it?
Totally. He basically said, look, when people see a husband and wife in a band, they focus on the relationship drama, they try to read the lyrics like a diary.
Looking for clues about their personal life.
Right. But, he argued, if they think you're brother and sister, you care more about the music, not the relationship. It was a deliberate manufactured myth, designed purely to redirect attention away from the personal and squarely onto the art.
It's like a marketing strategy rooted in creative constraint. He built a narrative wall around them.
Yeah, to make sure the sound, the simplicity of the music itself stayed front and center. He understood mystery gets attention, but personal drama, that can kill focus. So he controlled it by creating this, artistic artifice.
Speaking of artistic artifice and restriction, that leads us perfectly into the real heart of Jack White's philosophy. This whole idea of the constriction of art, his obsession with the number 3, and what we're calling the analog imperative.
Okay, the visual side of the White Stripes. That was absolutely a manifesto built on scarcity, the exclusive use of red, white, and black, and I mean exclusive, no other colors allowed, on stage, in videos, album art, anything. It was non-negotiable.
And the way he explained that choice is pretty striking. He said those 3 colors are the most powerful combination ever, period. He drew inspiration from things that project power or instant familiarity, specifically mentioning the Coca-Cola logo.
Which evokes that kind of innocent, childish vibe.
Right. But then also, and this is pretty jarring, a Nazi banner.
Yeah, he really said that.
Which projects, absolute stark authority. That duality seems totally deliberate. Innocence mixed with this undeniable stripped-down power.
It's the ultimate statement on controlled impact, visually. And maybe it served that secondary purpose he mentioned too, distracting from the fact they were 2 young white musicians playing what he openly called black music, classic American blues. The visual loudness kind of compensated for the minimal lineup.
And that musical limitation was just as brutal, but brilliant, intentionally having no bass player. That duo structure wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate restriction on the instrumental depth. Jack always seemed to anchor the band around the absolute minimum needed, that sacred number 3.
Ah, yes, the power of 3. It's not just a habit for him, it's practically a religion. The essential ingredients for any song had to be 3 elements: vocals, guitar, drums, or maybe vocals, piano, drums. And this obsession pops up everywhere. Third Man Records, obviously, appending 3 to his own name sometimes.
Didn't he call himself 3 Quid on a UK tour once?
He did, yeah, 3 quid. It's constant.
I love the origin story he tells for this obsession, though, because it ties right back to the upholstery.
It does. It all apparently comes from this Vladimir Kagan couch. High-end stuff.
Yeah.
He was working on it and noticed just 3 staples holding the fabric down on the back. Just 3. And he was supposedly mesmerized by this simple geometric fact. 3 was the minimum needed to do the job right. He saw it as symbolizing this almost iconic, mysterious perfection that cannot be obtained, that search for pure, functional simplicity.
And that whole philosophy of restriction, of less is more, is absolutely central to his analog imperative. He views digital recordings freedom, endless tracks, unlimited options, perfect mistake correction, as fundamentally bad for creativity.
He says it pretty bluntly. Digital's freedom and all those options, for the most part, not good choices for an artist. Why? Because it lets you avoid commitment. Analog tape. Once you lay down that track, especially on limited tracks, you're kind of married to that performance. There's no undo.
That's the key, right? The beauty he finds in flaws. He argues perfection isn't the goal. Commitment and character are.
Exactly. Analog mechanics, he believes, give you those inherent little flaws and tiny little specks and hisses. And those aren't mistakes to him. They will add to the idea of something beautiful, something romantic. The flaws are the romance.
See this philosophy built into his recording setup. His home studio in Nashville, the famous Third Man studio, It's built for intimacy and focus.
Bristle.
Only 2 main rooms, but packed with serious vintage analog gear. A Neve mixing console.
Which is a classic piece of kit, known for that warm, rich sound.
And 2 Studer A800 2-inch 8-track tape recorders.
Okay, let's pause on that Studer 8-track for a sec, because that limitation is huge.
You explain that.
Well, today, recording digitally, you might use 50, 100, maybe even unlimited tracks for layering sounds. Recording on an 8-track machine means you have exactly 8 channels total for everything.
Wow. Try making a complex rock record with just 8 lanes of audio.
It forces incredible discipline. You have to commit to the sound of the drums, the guitar, the vocals almost immediately. There's basically zero room for endless tweaking or fixing things in the mix later. Performance is everything.
It forces you to prioritize the actual performance over slick production tricks. And he demonstrated this radical minimalism perfectly in that documentary. It might get loud.
Oh yeah, that scene is iconic. Just to prove that artistry doesn't need fancy gear, he built a working guitar right there on camera. Used just a plank of wood, 3 nails.
Of course, 3.
Naturally. A glass Coke bottle for a slide, a single string, and a pickup. Slapped it together. Then he held up this crude thing and basically asked, "Who says you need to buy a guitar?" That image just perfectly sums up his whole philosophy. Art comes from scarcity and ingenuity, not from buying expensive stuff.
Okay, so now let's get to the actual music that came out of this incredibly strict philosophy. The White Stripes' iconic discography, which somehow managed to go from lo-fi stuff recorded in an attic to, like, genuine global stadium anthems.
Their first album, the self-titled one in 1999, was mostly recorded in the attic of Jack's parents' house. Super lo-fi, and significantly, it was dedicated to that Mississippi Delta bluesman, Son House. Just hammering home that deep foundational connection.
Then in 2000, they followed up with Distill, recorded on that 8-track analog machine right in Jack's living room. The title is Dutch, means the style. And this is where you see his other artistic interests bleeding into the music.
Yeah, the title refers to that early 20th century minimalist Dutch art movement. Distill's whole thing was functional simplicity, geometric shapes, and using only primary colors. Red, yellow, blue, plus black and white.
Sounds familiar.
Exactly. By naming the album that, he wasn't just being arty, he was basically declaring, my music, like that art, is searching for the purest, most essential functional form, which lined up perfectly with the red, white, black look and the 2-person band structure. It was all one cohesive statement.
The big breakthrough really came in 2001 with White Blood Cells, famously recorded in less than 4 days. Just bang, done.
Incredible speed. And it got massive critical acclaim. Suddenly, they were at the forefront of that whole garage rock revival thing that was happening.
And the success was definitely boosted by the visual genius of that video for Fell in Love with a Girl.
Oh, the Lego video. Directed by Michel Gondry. It was brilliant. Just that iconic, super fast-paced Lego animation. MTV played it constantly. It made them mainstream stars overnight. Won them 3 MTV Video Music Awards, too.
That momentum carried them straight into 2003's Elephant, recorded in London this time.
Yeah.
But sticking to the rules, only pre-1960s gear, and knocked out in just 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Talk about commitment to analog. Well, not perfection, but analog character.
Yeah, Elephant showed they could evolve without ditching those core constraints. It also featured Meg's first lead vocal on that great track, In the Cold, Cold Night. You know, critics were often divided on her drumming style, but most acknowledged her simple, powerful playing was absolutely essential to the band's unique, raw feel.
And Elephant is, of course, where we find their ultimate signature track, Seven Nation Army. That song didn't just win Best Rock Song at the Grammys in 2004. It became this global cultural juggernaut. You hear it everywhere, sports stadiums, protests. It's ubiquitous.
And what's so cool about that song is the sound itself. That main riff sounds like a bass line, right?
Yeah.
So low and heavy.
It totally sounds like a bass.
But it's not. It's Jack playing his vintage guitar, that 1964 JB Hutto Montgomery Airline. He runs it through a Digitech whammy pedal set to drop the pitch down 1 octave. It's a trick. A constrained solution to the problem he created by not having a bass player. Genius, really.
Their sound took another turn for the 5th album, Get Behind Me, Satan, in 2005. This felt like a deliberate shift away from the electric blues overload. Introduced a lot more piano-driven melodies, and even unexpected instruments, like marimba on The Nurse.
Yeah, Jack famously swapped his electric guitar for an acoustic on most tracks, adopted a more rhythmic, almost folky approach sometimes. It felt like a conscious effort to not just repeat the success of Elephant, you know?
Right.
To keep challenging themselves artistically.
But they did eventually circle back to the loud garage rock with their final album, Icky Thump, in 2007. Ironically, for a band known for recording fast, This one actually took the longest, almost 3 weeks.
Yeah, recorded at Blackbird's studio in Nashville. But the title track brought them back to the Grammys, won Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group.
Their final big push as a band was that really ambitious, highly publicized Canadian tour in 2007.
Oh man, that tour was legendary. The goal was incredible, play in every single province and territory in Canada, including places way off the usual touring map like Iqaluit up north and Gillespie, Nova Scotia.
And the sources have these great little stories from that tour, like the shortest concert ever played.
Right. In St. John's, Newfoundland, they apparently showed up, crowds there, they plug in, Jack plays one single E note, Meg hits a cymbal once, and they just walked off stage. Done.
The sheer nerve traveling all that way for a 1-second piece of performance art.
It just highlights his relentless dedication to the concept, the simplicity, even as a kind of conceptual joke. But it maybe also hints at the pressures building up around that time.
Yeah. Sadly, that tour ended early. Dates got canceled because of Meg's acute anxiety. We hear so much about Jack's intensity, but Meg's personal struggle with that relentless touring machine seems to have been the final breaking point.
The band's archivist actually recounted the very last show they played in South Haven, Mississippi. Meg apparently came up to him afterwards and just said, flat out, this is a last show, period.
Wow. And they officially announced the split in 2011. The statement said they wanted to preserve what is beautiful and special about the band. That tension between Jack's very public, almost maximalist drive and Meg's super reserved, almost reclusive nature just became unsustainable, it seems.
Yet, Jack always fiercely defended her contribution, didn't he? He said her kind of childlike simplicity was the best part of this band. He needed that counterbalance.
So, once the White Stripes officially dissolved, you might think things would slow down for Jack White. But no way. In fact, he just seemed to formalize those parallel side projects he had already started. It really showcases his insane output and this constant need for new creative outlets, often ones that challenge the persona people expected.
Yeah, his multiple band history is crucial to understanding his work ethic. It never stopped. Back in 2005, while the Stripes were still huge, he co-founded the Raconteurs. That was with Brendan Benson, Jack Lawrence, Patrick Keeler, a much more traditional, kind of expansive rock band setup compared to the Stripes' tight duo format.
And they were successful too. Their debut, Broken Boy Soldiers, and the follow-up, Consolers of the Lonely, both got Grammy nominations. It proved he could definitely thrive outside the strict constraints of the two-piece.
And they even reunited fairly recently, put out Help a Stranger in 2019.
Then there's the other big one, the supergroup The Dead Weather, formed in 2009.
Right, with Alison Mosshart from The Kills, Dean Fertitta, and Jack Lawrence again. And what's totally fascinating there is the role Jack chose. He wasn't up front on guitar.
He played drums.
Mostly drums, yeah. And shared vocals. He consciously stepped away from the lead guitarist role he was famous for.
It's another self-imposed constraint, isn't it? He's challenging his own image, forcing himself into a different creative space.
Exactly. They put out albums like Whorehound and Sea of Cowards, really heavy atmospheric stuff.
And beyond his own bands, his production work and collaborations are pretty stellar, showing he can adapt across genres.
Like in 2004, producing and playing on Loretta Lynn's big comeback album, Van Leer Rose. That was huge, commercially successful, critically acclaimed, bridging garage rock and classic country.
He also jumped into the blockbuster movie world, recorded that massive James Bond theme, Another Way to Die.
With Alicia Keys, yeah, for Quantum of Solace in 2008. And that was actually the only duet ever to do a Bond theme. Another little bit of history there.
And talk about staying relevant in 2016, he co-wrote and played guitar and sang backup on Beyoncé's Don't Hurt Yourself.
On Lemonade, yeah. Which is amazing when you think about it. He's this analog purist, right? But he clearly knows how to collaborate effectively with arguably the most cutting-edge, technologically advanced pop artist on the planet.
So, moving into his solo career proper, he's released 6 solo studio albums now, all met with pretty significant success. His debut in 2012, Blunderbuss, went straight to #1 on the Billboard 200.
And the tour for Blunderbuss was signature Jack White weirdness in its structure. He experimented with having 2 completely separate, alternating touring bands. There was the all-female band, the Peacocks, and the all-male band, the Buzzards.
Right. And he'd switch between them night to night, sometimes even deciding at the last minute which band would play. Total unpredictability.
Added this element of random chance, different interpretations of the songs, but sources note, while it was a cool experiment in, gender dynamics and musical styles, he eventually had to scrap it.
Too expensive.
Yeah, apparently the cost of keeping 2 full bands and crews on the road was just prohibitive. Even the analog imperative has to bow to the tour budget sometimes.
His next album, 2014's Lazaretto, hit a really specific milestone that must have pleased him.
Oh yeah, the vinyl record. It broke the record for the biggest sales week for a vinyl album since, 1991. It really emphasized that his whole devotion to the vinyl format wasn't just some artistic quirk, it was commercially potent. The medium was the message, and people bought it.
Then came a really experimental phase leading up to Boarding House Reach in 2018. That album felt like a total departure.
It really was. He worked in the self-imposed isolation, rented a small apartment in Nashville, and crucially worked without a cell phone, completely cut off all that external digital noise.
And musically, he was pulling from really unexpected places.
Totally. He talked about drawing inspiration from 80s and 90s rap artists, a tribe called Quest, Kanye West. And he hired backing musicians who'd played with major hip-hop and gospel acts, purposefully trying to break out of his established blues rock box. It was a pretty wild, kind of polarizing record for some fans, but showed his commitment to never getting comfortable.
That drive for constant output just continued. In 2022, he dropped 2 completely distinct albums just months apart. Fear of the Dawn, which is more traditional, high-energy rock.
And Entering Heaven Alive, which was much gentler, more acoustic, folk-oriented. It was a cool way to showcase the sheer breadth of his styles, delivered at this relentless pace.
And the surprises keep coming. Just recently, 2024, he surprise released his 6th solo album, No Name. Did it by distributing test pressings directly to his Third Man record stores.
Super low-key release strategy. And critics noted that this one seemed to signal a return, maybe, to his earlier punk blue sound, shades of the White Stripes. Suggests maybe another shift or refinement is happening.
Okay, before we move off the music itself, we absolutely have to dig into the gear a bit more. His instruments are like characters in the story. We already mentioned that beat-up 1964 J.B. Hutto Montgomery airline guitar.
The one that makes the fake bass tone in Seven Nation Army?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about that airline guitar is it wasn't some expensive vintage classic when he started using it. It was a cheap department store, mail-order guitar.
Right. Kind of disposable back then?
Exactly. But that's the point. It was a basic, almost crude tool that he made iconic through sheer will and creativity. That guitar, combined with the Digitech Whammy WH4 pedal set 1 octave down, it's the perfect analog workaround for a band missing a bass player, making a virtue out of a limitation.
He also uses those 3 big Gretsch Rancher Falcon acoustic guitars, the ones he calls his girlfriends.
Yes, the girlfriends. This is pure Jack White mythology building. Each of these huge, flashy acoustic guitars has a picture of a classic movie star on the back. Claudette Colbert, the brunette, he used that one with the white stripes. Rita Hayworth, the redhead, for the Raconteurs. And Veronica Lick, the blonde, came along with the Dead Weather.
He literally assigns personalities to his tools, elevating them from just instruments to, like, collaborators or muses.
Totally. It feeds the whole mystique.
And finally, we can't talk White Stripes without talking Meg. Her drumming style is still debated constantly, often described as minimalistic, simple, even childlike. She used a pretty standard Ludwig classic maple kit, paste cymbals.
Yeah, and Jack always defended her style against critics who called her technically limited or unsophisticated. He called her the antithesis of a modern drummer, meant as a huge compliment. He argued her simple, powerful, almost primal rhythms were incredible and inspiring. He needed that specific constraint, that simplicity, as the foundation for his own wild energy.
That analog imperative we talked about, it definitely extends way beyond just the recording studio or the stage. It's really manifested in this whole empire he built around his music. Third Man Records.
Right. Third Man Records, co-founded way back in 2001, but it became a real physical presence when the Nashville headquarters with the studio and record store opened in 2009. And the whole philosophy is right there in the slogan, "Your turntable's not dead."
A direct echo of his old upholstery slogan.
Exactly. Your furniture's not dead. Your turntable's not dead. It's all about preservation, valuing the physical object. The label is intensely focused on releasing vinyl, pressing vinyl, often doing really unusual or elaborate vinyl packages. It's the ultimate physical analog artifact in music.
And he didn't just stop at running his own label. Jack White is actually a serious, active advocate for preserving old recordings. This is where his love for the past turns into real-world action.
Yeah, he's a board member for the Library of Congress's National Recording Preservation Foundation. which
Yeah.
is pretty cool. And he famously donated $200,000 of his own money to help restore and preserve deteriorating sound recordings, like old reel-to-reel tapes, wax cylinders, stuff like that. He's actively trying to make sure the analog history he loves doesn't just crumble away.
His philanthropy is also really deeply tied to his hometown, Detroit. Remember back in 2013, the historic Detroit Masonic Temple, which is apparently the largest Masonic temple in the world, was facing foreclosure, owed like $142,000 in back taxes.
Right, and Jack White just secretly paid the entire bill. Anonymous donation at first.
It was a genuine act of saving a piece of history and civic pride for Detroit.
And as a thank you, the temple management renamed their second largest theater a beautiful, historic space, the Jack White Theater. It's a pretty remarkable example of giving back directly to the place that shaped him.
Now, despite all this dedication to art, preservation, philanthropy, Jack White has always been this intensely scrutinized figure. He frequently attracts controversy, and a lot of it seems to stem from the media's fascination with his quote-unquote eccentric persona and maybe his own need for total control over everything.
Yeah, it creates this ongoing debate you see among critics, the riddle of authenticity.
Yeah.
Is he genuinely living this kind of weird mythological life, or is he consciously concocting this stuff with a wink, playing a character for media attention? White himself gave the perfect non-answer once, saying, "I'm really complicated, as simple as I wish I was."
The public incidents, though, they're kind of crucial for understanding that tension. Back in 2003, there was that very high-profile physical fight with Jason Stolzheimer, the singer from the Von Bondies.
Right, in a Detroit club. It got ugly, led to White pleading guilty to assault and battery. He got a fine, had to attend anger management classes.
This was pretty early in his big rise to fame, and it kind of revealed this volatile side, like the tension between his super-controlled artistic world and the messy reality of just being a person in the world, interacting with other musicians. It showed the public cost of maintaining that tight control.
Then there was the long-running, very public feud with the Black Keys.
During his pretty contentious divorce from Karen Elson, some private emails White sent got leaked.
And in them, he had some really harsh, disparaging things to say about the Black Keys.
Accusing them of ripping him off, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. He later apologized for the more personal insults in the emails, but initially he kind of stood by his artistic frustration, this feeling that other bands, especially the Black Keys, were imitating his sound without, giving credit or doing anything new. It's a classic example of the purists struggling when their influence becomes widespread. How do you react when people start sounding like you?
He did eventually reconcile with Dan Auerbach and Patrick Carney, though, right? After some awkward run-ins.
Yeah, there was apparently a confrontation in a bar, but they eventually talked it out and publicly buried the hatchet, diffused that tension.
And then, who could forget the great guacamole writer controversy? This is like the perfect storm of media attention versus his control freak tendencies.
Oh, Guacgate, yeah. The University of Oklahoma's student newspaper published his entire backstage tour writer. And it included this incredibly specific, detailed recipe for guacamole.
Like down to the type of avocados and how to cut them.
Exactly. And bizarrely, a strict no bananas anywhere rule for backstage.
Naturally, it went viral instantly. Painted him as this ridiculous diva demanding perfect guac and having weird fruit phobias.
White was furious. He wrote this long open letter blasting the journalists for focusing on drama or a diva instead of the actual show, the music. He tried to explain it away. Said the elaborate guacamole recipe was actually an inside joke his tour manager put in there, sort of a test to see if local promoters actually read the writer carefully.
Okay. Plausible, maybe?
And the banana ban, he said, was due to a specific tour member having a serious food allergy. Not just him hating bananas. Whether you buy the explanations or not, the incident perfectly highlighted that struggle. Media intrusion versus his manufactured mystique. The media sees diva demands, he sees necessary logistics or inside jokes gone wrong.
Finally, we do need to touch on the political use of Seven Nation Army. We have to report this impartially. That song, his biggest hit, has become this magnet for political statements and conflict.
Absolutely. So the White Stripes officially denounced Donald Trump using the song in his campaign materials, both in 2016 and again very strongly in 2024. In 2024, they actually issued a statement calling the Trump campaign fascists for using it. Strong words.
They even sold Icky Trump t-shirts. A play on Icky Thumb?
Right, and they filed a copyright infringement lawsuit against the 2024 campaign over the song's use, though sources say that lawsuit was later dropped.
But then, conversely, White apparently did give permission for the song to be used in a different political context more recently.
Yeah, in 2025, California Governor Gavin Newsom used the song in a social media post criticizing Republican redistricting efforts, and Jack White released a statement himself, saying, quote, "I'm okay with this track being used in this manner, not so much when Trump and his Gestapo try to use one of my songs."
Yeah.
So it shows a very selective, very personal approach to who gets to use his music politically. He's clearly stating his own leanings while also exercising his right to control his arts associations. When you step back and look at it all, the scope of Jack White's achievement is pretty staggering. We're talking 12 Grammy Awards, consistently ranked by critics and magazines as one of the greatest guitarists of all time.
And Rolling Stone ranked the White Stripes as one of the 6 greatest musical duos ever. That's a huge company.
Yeah. His legacy as really one of the key artists who drove that whole 2000s rock revival. You know, the media dubbed them the saviors of rock and roll back then, desperate for guitar bands.
Right, that narrative.
That legacy is totally cemented, and it's about to be formally recognized in 2025 when the White Stripes get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It's fascinating. He built this entire career on controlling every single tiny detail, building up this complex mythology, championing these analog limitations, and maintaining this constant evolving public presence, whether it's through surprise albums or unexpected collaborations.
Always keeping people guessing, always working.
Which really brings us to a final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on after this deep dive. You have Jack White, the intense, incredibly public, detail-obsessed curator of his entire musical universe. And then you have Meg White, the person who, after the band broke up, basically retreated entirely from the media, became, by all accounts, a virtual hermit.
Polar opposites in terms of public life.
Exactly. So what does that enduring tension between his maximalist mythological vision and her incredibly simple, childlike essential presence, which Jack himself said was the best part of this band, what does that tension ultimately tell us? What does it tell us about the nature of rock music's most valuable artistic contributions? Is the real impact found in the constraints themselves? Or is it maybe more in the performance of those constraints by someone like Jack, who was willing to commit so completely to the myth for so long?
Yeah. What is the secret ingredient? The structure or the person living inside it? Something to think about.